Hello and welcome to WP. This week it's been 4 short days in WA for Scott Morrison, pitching to the state's voters ahead of the federal election. The Prime Minister has returned to the state, touring Perth while announcing funding for state projects and discussing WA's GST share, jobs and COVID-19. We talked with Federal Attorney General Michaelia Cash about how she saw Mr Morrison's trip out west.
Senator, thanks for joining us this week.
It's always great to be with you, Ivan.
It's been a very gruelling journey indeed, a gruelling 4 days worth of tour in Perth and regional WA for the Prime Minister. Now, you've been beside him since the beginning of the trip. What's your assessment of his journey?
Well, certainly since Western Australia has reopened its borders both to the rest of Australia and, of course, the world, it's been fantastic to have Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia, touch back down in Western Australia. As Scott said at a breakfast to the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I think you were at it whilst we were here, he is a long-time friend to Western Australia. He's been coming to Western Australia long before he went into politics. And he did remind people, though, and I think this is a really important reminder. This is the man who, when he was the Treasurer of Australia, he gave back to Western Australians what they so rightly deserved, and that was, of course, our fair share of the GST. When he was Treasurer, he brought the rest of Australia with him, delivered back to Western Australia that fair share of GST, and as the Prime Minister, he legislated it. He is a great friend to Western Australia.
But speaking of being great friend to Western Australia, the comments that were made during the borders were shut, calling us cave people, on Clive Palmer, the legal issues. Why should West Australians believe that Mr Morrison is a friend of West Australia?
You look at what we have delivered for Western Australia. The recent announcement that he made, $4.3 billion in a dry dock in Henderson. That is great news for Western Australians, in particular when it comes to jobs. That'll create around 500 jobs in the construction and then around 2,000 jobs ongoing. The Perth City deal, yesterday, working with Premier McGowan, because it's a cooperative and collaborative relationship that the federal government, led by Scott Morrison, has with Premier McGowan in Western Australia, and that beautiful announcement about the Swan River Bridge, and of course the additional funding that both the state government and the Morrison government are providing to ECU in relation to their campus and the relocation of the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts. We work with the McGowan government as a federal team to deliver for all Western Australians.
On the matter of COVID support, what can people expect from the government?
Well, again, look at where we were in March 2020 and look at where we are today. As a government, way back in March 2020 when COVID first hit, we knew that we had to act quickly. We knew that because of the closing of the borders, because of the closing down of parts of the economy, we had to put in place measures to ensure that employers were sustained, but also that employees were sustained. And of course, we put in that measure called Job Keeper. So that was to ensure that employers were able to keep that important employment relationship with their employees. We obviously also provided significant support via the increase in Job Seeker. But we also provided, as you know, other forms of support, and in particular to small businesses in Australia. And as you've said to me today, throughout COVID and the support even you were able to receive as a business, you were able to invest in additional equipment to ensure that you could keep going. But I think also, a fundamental difference between the Morrison government and the Labor Party is our attitude towards taxes. The Labor Party, what did they promise at the last federal election? An additional $387 billion in taxes. The only thing Labor know about taxes is how to put them up. What we do as a Liberal government, it's in our DNA, it's what we believe in, lowering taxes for all Australians. Whether you're a small business, you will pay less tax under us, or whether you're a tax-paying Australian, you will pay less tax under us. When Labor were last in office, the tax rate that small businesses paid was 30%. Under the Morrison Liberal government, we have reduced that by 5 percentage points. Small businesses now pay 25%. You look at personal income tax on around $90,000. Under our government, the Morrison Liberal government, if you weren't around $90,000, you are now getting around $2,500 more in your pocket as a result of our tax cuts. So on tax alone, Labor, they'll always raise it because that's what they know how to, that's all they know how to do. But with us as a Liberal government, lowering taxes for the benefit of Australians and Australian businesses, that's what we do.
To women's matters, because a lot of our viewers are women. On the issue of Women's Board, should all women of Australia are confident about that their views and their perspectives and their concerns will be addressed by this government, particularly given what happened in Canberra?
The answer to that question is yes. I'm really proud to be part of a government that when it comes to delivering policies that empower women, that is exactly what we have done. When you look at employment, for example, women's employment in Australia is now, or should I say unemployment, 3.8%. If you look at where employment was prior to COVID and where you look at where employment is now, we have more people in employment across Australia than we have ever had before. In excess of 13.3 million Australians are in work. Women's unemployment is at an all-time low. Under the Morrison government, we now have over 50%, it's around 52% of board positions in Australia are held by women. That's never happened before. If you want to talk about the courts and my appointments there, I am a big believer that you do need diversity, in particular in gender, in the courts in Australia. And I have been fortunate enough in my time as Attorney General to make around 38 appointments to the federal courts in Australia. Over 50% of those appointments have been women. I made it my mission to actively go out and seek the best women that I could find, and I found them.
When it comes to Women's Network logo, there has been extraordinary amount of media discussion and coverage on the matter. Does this show us that the federal government is out of touch with female voters?
Well, what I'd say to you is this, that actually had nothing to do with the federal government. And again, I stand by our record on delivering for women under the Morrison government, in particular when it comes to jobs for women, and from my own personal perspective, appointments to government boards, but in particular appointments to the courts within Australia. That was an entirely internal departmental decision, and I understand the logo has been taken down and the relevant department will now consult with the staff as to what any future logo will look like. But totally separate to government, that was an internal departmental issue.
Wait, what can young voters expect from the Morrison government in the upcoming federal election and the federal budget?
Jobs. When I'm out there talking to people, it doesn't matter what age group, it is all about jobs. And we had always said that we would be a government that put in place the right policies that would ensure that employers were able to prosper, grow and create more jobs for Australians. When we came into office, and I've got the figures here, it's a clear choice when you look at, for example, youth unemployment under Labor in September 2013 was 12.7%. Under the Morrison government, February 2022, it is 9.3%.
But there are some particularly difficult areas in Australia, such as Mandurah and other suburbs around other capital cities, have challenges on youth unemployment. Will there be specific plans in the federal budget to address this? Because 9%, it is a significant
It's coming
reduction.
down, but it's still too high, as we know. It's still too high. Look, it's a really, really good point to raise. So one thing, again, that we have well and truly delivered for all Australians, but it's including Western Australians.
What will you deliver?
Yep. and it's what I have delivered with the Morrison government, actually.
I think
and
what
that
people
is
want to know what
the
we will
highest number of people in apprenticeships ever in Australia. That is a good thing, because what's an apprenticeship? It is a job for life. What do employers want from their employees? They want you to be work ready from day one. So when I was the skills minister, I worked very closely with my counterparts at a state level, including obviously very closely with the Western Australian skills minister. And we were able to put in place the Job Trainer Fund. This was free or low cost training in courses that were in labour market demand in particular states and territories across Australia. That is all about a government putting in place those policies that are going to ensure that you as a young person, you know where the jobs are, you're able to get that free or low cost training, you're able to get into that apprenticeship, and you're able to get a job.
Michaelia Cash, thanks for joining us this week on Western.
It's always great to be with you, Ivan.
And now, here's AMA WA spokesman Dr Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. In general terms, we're going very well in Western Australia with our hospitalisations and deaths from COVID compared to other states that saw similar numbers. And the reason for that is that we waited until we had very high third dose boosters. In fact, we probably hit about the sweet spot for those boosters to be working well in a large part of the vulnerable population. Disappointing that we're seeing hundreds of outbreaks within aged care facilities. The ventilation and the masking there is obviously not up to the task of keeping this very contagious variant out. And hopefully the high booster rates among a lot of that population will continue to see good outcomes there. For the general population, we need to be wearing very good masks, high quality masks wherever possible. We use an N95 or a KF94 mask, and seeing too many people walking around with them hanging off their nose or not thinking that it's important when this is a virus that still spreads like cigarette smoke does. So really important to have a very effective mask on if you're indoors around other people at the shops and so on. I'm tending to avoid crowded indoor places wherever possible. When I do go in there, I love the security of having a really tight fitting N95 mask on, knowing that all the air that I breathe is being sucked in through that filtration material. We've got a bit of a problem at the moment with the approvals process for molnupiravir, which is one of the antiviral drugs that can be used effectively in the population, particularly those who are vulnerable to complications, so the older population, and it's been approved by and listed on the National Prescribing Service as available to everybody, but in Western Australia they're restricting it to unvaccinated people, which seems to be a bit of a punishment for those who have been vaccinated, and that needs to stop, and we need to make access to it easy without all the red tape of the bureaucracy of needing permission of the state government to get something that the GPs well understand. So we need to get that piece of red tape sorted out. Other than that, at the moment, the state travelling better than anywhere else in the world at this stage of the pandemic. So thanks very much for your time.
And that's WP for this week. We'll be back again next time, but for now, it's back to you, Ivan and Melly.
Thanks, Nelson. And here is Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. Today on 6 News, breaking news, all the latest developments on the SA election, plus US President Joe Biden presses his Chinese counterpart on support for Moscow, and 3 years of unbiased news and uncensored views. 6 News celebrates our 3rd birthday. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us, or head to our website, 6newsau.com. For now, though, guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs, with the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.